I always thought my wedding day would be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the moment I finally understood that my sister would never let me have anything that was truly mine. My name is Tessa, and 5 years ago, I stood in front of the mirror in my wedding dress, trying to calm my nerves before walking down the aisle. That's when Jade burst into the bridal suite, practically glowing with excitement. Tess! Oh my God, I have the most amazing news! She grabbed my hands, bouncing on her toes like we were teenagers again. I'm pregnant. The world stopped spinning for a moment. I stared at her, my mouth going dry. What? I know, right? I just found out this morning. She twirled in her bridesmaid dress, her perfect curls bouncing. I wasn't going to say anything, but I just couldn't keep it in anymore. Mom and Dad are going to flip. Jade, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Could you maybe wait until tomorrow to tell everyone? She looked at me like I'd suggested she jump off a bridge. But everyone's here now, the whole family. It's perfect timing. Before I could respond, my mother rushed in. Girls, we're almost ready to... She stopped, noticing Jade's expression. What's going on? Mom, Jade squealed. I'm having a baby. What followed was exactly what I'd feared. My mother burst into tears, hugging Jade while I stood there in my wedding dress, forgotten. Within minutes, the news spread through the bridal party, then to the guests already seated in the church. Antonio's waiting at the altar. Remington, my best friend and colleague, poked her head in. But everyone's talking about... She caught my eye and stopped. I gripped my bouquet tighter, the stems cracking under my fingers. Let's just get this over with. The ceremony was a blur. As I walked down the aisle, I heard the whispers, saw the excited glances thrown at Jade instead of me. Even during our vows, I caught my father looking at her, beaming with pride. At the reception, my father's speech somehow became more about his upcoming grandchild than his daughter's marriage. And while we're celebrating one blessing today, he said, raising his glass, we've been doubly blessed with the news of our first grandchild. The crowd erupted in cheers. Jade stood up, basking in the attention, while I sat there in my white dress, feeling invisible. You okay? Antonio squeezed my hand under the table. I forced a smile. Of course, it's wonderful news. Later during the father-daughter dance, Dad couldn't help himself. Your sister's going to need you more than ever now, he said. You've always been the responsible one, Tessa, the steady one. The steady one, the responsible one, never the special one. I know, Dad, I replied, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. The night wore on, and every conversation somehow circled back to Jade's news. Even my new mother-in-law cornered me to gush about how exciting it was to have a wedding and a baby announcement on the same day. Around midnight, I found myself hiding in the venue's bathroom, staring at my reflection. Remington found me there. Want me to kill her? She offered, only half joking. I know people. I laughed despite myself. She's pregnant. We can't kill a pregnant woman. Fine, we'll wait 9 months. She handed me a tissue. You know this is messed up, right? You're allowed to be angry. What's the point? I wiped my eyes carefully, preserving what was left of my makeup. This is just how it's always been. Jade does whatever Jade wants, and everyone acts like it's perfectly normal. It's not normal, Tess. It's... My phone buzzed, interrupting her. Mom's name flashed on the screen. If that's another excited update about Jade's morning sickness, I swear to God. Remington muttered. I answered, expecting exactly that. But my mother's voice was different this time, shaky, afraid. Tessa, are you sitting down? There's something we need to talk about. I caught Remington's eye, my heart suddenly racing. Mom, what's wrong? It's about Jade, she said, and for once, The mention of my sister's name didn't fill me with resignation. This time, it filled me with dread. The bathroom door swung open, letting in the muffled sound of the reception's music and laughter. I gripped the phone tighter, knowing somehow that whatever came next would change everything. "Mom?" I pressed. "What about Jade?" Her voice cracked. "We need you to come home, right away." 5 years after my wedding, I sat in my parents' living room, staring at my sister's medical files spread across the coffee table. The same sister who had stolen my wedding spotlight was now dying of kidney failure. "Both kidneys are failing," my mother explained, her voice trembling. "The doctors say she needs a transplant within the next 6 months. And you've called me because—" I already knew the answer, but I needed to hear it. Dad leaned forward in his armchair. "You're the only match, Tessa. We've all been tested. Your mother, me, even some of Jade's close friends. But you're the only viable donor." The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of Jade taking everything from me, my body held the one thing she desperately needed. "Where is she?" I asked, noticing the unusual quiet in the house. "At the hospital," Mom replied. "She's been there for 3 days. The dialysis it's not going well." I picked up one of the medical reports, my therapy training helping me maintain a professional demeanor. "And she knows you're asking me?" "She doesn't want us to," Dad admitted. "She says she doesn't deserve to ask you for anything." "Well, she's right about that." The words came out sharper than I intended. "Tessa," Mom started, but I cut her off. "No, let's be honest for once. When was the last time Jade considered my feelings about anything? The wedding? The countless birthdays she hijacked? That scholarship she took even though she knew I'd been working toward it for years?" "That was a long time ago," Dad defended. "People change." My phone buzzed, a text from Antonio. "Everything okay? Need backup?" I typed back quickly, "Not yet. We'll call soon." "Tessa," Mom reached for my hand. "I know things haven't always been fair." I pulled away. "Fair? Mom, she announced her pregnancy at my wedding day. And she lost that baby 2 months later," Dad reminded me quietly. "Maybe that's why she's been the way she is. She was like this long before that happened." I stood up, pacing the familiar living room. "And you both enabled it. Still do." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken truths. Through the window, I watched our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, watering her roses, the same roses I'd helped her plant when I was 12, while Jade was inside charming our parents into buying her a new phone. My phone buzzed again, this time from Remington. "Remember, you don't owe anyone anything. Your body, your choice." "The procedure," I finally said, turning back to my parents. "What does it involve?" Mom's face lit up with hope. "The doctors can explain everything. It's very safe nowadays." "I haven't said yes," I interrupted. "I'm just asking." Dad stood up, approaching me carefully. "Sweetheart, I know this is a lot to process, but she's your sister." "Is she?" I met his eyes. "Because from where I'm standing, she's been more like a tornado that keeps destroying everything in my life while you two clean up after her." "That's not fair," Mom protested. "No." I picked up my purse. "Tell me, if the situations were reversed, would Jade donate her kidney to me?" Neither of them answered. They didn't have to. "I need time to think," I said, heading for the door. "She doesn't have much time, Tessa," Dad called after me. I paused at the doorway, my hand on the knob. For once in her life, Jade will have to wait for something she wants. That night, I dreamed of my wedding day again, but this time, when Jade announced her pregnancy, I didn't stay quiet. In the dream, I turned to her and said what I should have said 5 years ago. "No, not today. Not everything gets to be about you." I woke up with tears on my face and Antonio's arms around me. You were talking in your sleep, he murmured. I was? Mm-hmm. You said no over and over. I sat up checking my phone. 3 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad, and a text from an unknown number that made my heart stop. Tessa, it's Jade. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but please, if you can find it in your heart to hear me out, I'm in room 415 at Memorial Hospital. I understand if you don't come. I wouldn't come if I were you. Antonio read the message over my shoulder. What are you going to do? I stared at the phone, feeling the weight of power shift for the first time in our relationship. I'm going to make her earn it. Earn what? My forgiveness, I said, getting out of bed. And my kidney. For the first time since my wedding day, I felt completely in control. Jade needed something only I could give her, and for once, she'd have to play by my rules. You're seriously considering this? Remington set her coffee mug down hard enough to make the break room table shake. We were between therapy sessions at the clinic where we both worked, and I'd just told her about my plan. Not considering. I've decided. I pulled up Jade's Instagram on my phone, still perfectly curated despite her illness, showing her hospital room transformed into what looked like a luxury hotel suite. Look at this, even dying she's performing. Remington leaned over. 200,000 likes on a hospital selfie? Your sister's really something else. She's an influencer now. Everything's content. I scrolled through the comments. So brave. Stay strong, Queen. Praying for you. If they only knew. And you want her to tell them? I want her to tell everyone the truth about everything. I locked my phone. That's my price. Antonio's voice came from the doorway. The truth about what, exactly? I turned to find my husband watching me with concern. He worked as a pediatrician in the same medical complex, and our lunch breaks often overlapped. About who she really is, I said. About what she's done. He sat down, unwrapping his sandwich. Tess, I get it, but using your kidney as leverage, that's cruel, I finished. More cruel than what she did to me? 2 wrongs don't make a right, he said gently. Remington snorted. No, but 3 lefts do. Sometimes people need a wake-up call. My next patient's file buzzed on my phone. Sarah, 16, struggling with an emotionally manipulative sister. The irony wasn't lost on me. I need to get back. I stood up. But think about it. Jade has built her whole brand on being this perfect, inspiring person. Maybe it's time her followers saw the real her. In my office, I couldn't focus on Sarah's session. As she talked about her sister's latest betrayal, I kept seeing parallels to my own situation. And then she told everyone at school that I tried to steal her boyfriend. Sarah wiped her eyes. But I didn't. He asked me for help with his college applications, that's all. I handed her a tissue. How did that make you feel? Like I wanted to hurt her back, Sarah admitted. Is that terrible? No, I said, perhaps too quickly. It's human to want justice. After Sarah left, I sat at my desk, staring at the degrees on my wall. Family therapist. Here I was, supposedly an expert in healing family relationships, plotting revenge against my own sister. My phone buzzed again. Mom. Jade's asking for you. Please come see her. I typed back. I'll come tomorrow. I have conditions. The response was immediate. Conditions? Tessa, she's your sister. Yes, and I'm her only hope. Tell her to be ready to talk at 10 a.m. That evening, I rehearsed what I'd say to Jade. Antonio found me pacing in our kitchen, talking to myself. You sound like you're preparing for court, he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. Maybe I am, the court of public opinion. He turned me to face him. What happens if she says no? Then she doesn't get my kidney. And you could live with that? I pulled away. Could you live with letting someone who hurt you over and over just take a piece of you without any accountability? She's dying, Tess. She's been killing me slowly for years. The words echoed in our kitchen. Every time she took something that mattered to me, every time she made me feel small, every time our parents chose her, she's been killing the person I could have been. Antonio was quiet for a long moment. Just make sure this is really about accountability and not revenge. I went to bed early but couldn't sleep. Around midnight, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Hi, Tessa. This is Jennifer, Jade's old roommate from college. I heard about what's happening. There are some things you should know. I sat up, fully awake now. Jennifer had been Jade's best friend until they had a mysterious falling out 3 years ago. No one knew what happened, and Jade had blocked Jennifer on all social media. I'm listening, I typed back. Not over text. Can we meet? There's a lot you don't know about your sister. I thought about it for a moment. Coffee shop on 5th Street, 9 a.m. tomorrow. I'll be there, and Tessa, don't let her manipulate you. Not again. I lay back down, my mind racing. What did Jennifer know? What else had Jade done that I didn't know about? Tomorrow, I'd meet Jennifer. Then I'd face my sister and lay out my terms. For once, Jade would have to face the consequences of her actions. As I finally drifted off, I thought about Sarah, my young patient, and her desire for justice. Sometimes I realized the kindest thing we can do for someone is to make them face their own truth, even if it hurts. Especially if it hurts. Jennifer was already waiting when I arrived at the coffee shop, nervously shredding a napkin. She looked different from the polished sorority girl I remembered, more serious, with dark circles under her eyes. Thanks for meeting me, she said as I sat down. I've been following Jade's social media posts about her condition. You mean her perfectly filtered hospital photo shoots? Jennifer's laugh was bitter. Some things never change. Did you know she stole my boyfriend's senior year? I blinked. What? That's not even the worst part. She pulled out her phone. I've kept everything. Screenshots, texts, emails. I thought someday I'd need proof. She slid the phone across the table. What I saw made my coffee turn cold in my stomach. Screenshots of Jade's messages to Jennifer's then-boyfriend, dating back to when they were roommates. But it wasn't just about the boyfriend. There were messages about business ideas Jennifer had shared with Jade in confidence, which later became Jade's original social media ventures. She built her whole influencer career on stolen ideas. Jennifer's voice cracked. My ideas. And when I confronted her, she turned all our friends against me, said I was jealous, unstable. Classic Jade, I muttered. There's more. Jennifer took her phone back, scrolling. Remember your wedding? The pregnancy announcement? How could I forget? She wasn't pregnant. The world stopped. What? She bought a positive test online, planned the whole thing weeks in advance. I found the receipt in our apartment. Jennifer's hands shook. 2 months later, when she claimed she lost the baby, there was never any baby to lose. I gripped the table's edge, feeling sick. Why are you telling me this now? Because I saw your parents' post asking for kidney donors, and She met my eyes. I couldn't let her take something else from you without you knowing the whole truth. My phone buzzed. Mom, where are you? Jade's waiting. I have to go. I stood up. Thank you, Jennifer, for everything. Tessa? She caught my arm. Make her pay. The hospital corridor seemed longer than usual as I walked to Jade's room. My parents were waiting outside. Finally, Mom started, but I walked past her without a word. Jade lay in her hospital bed, somehow still managing to look Instagram ready despite the IV lines. Her eyes widened when she saw my expression. Everyone out, I said quietly. Now, Tessa, Dad began. Out. They left, closing the door behind them. Jade and I stared at each other in silence. You look good, she tried. Shut up. I pulled out my phone, showing her Jennifer's screenshots. Want to explain? Her face went pale. You talked to Jennifer? Fake pregnancy announcement at my wedding? Stealing her ideas? Tell me, Jade, is there anything real about you? I can explain. No, I cut her off. For once in your life, you're gonna listen. I have your matching kidney. If you want it, here are my terms. She swallowed hard, nodding. You're gonna post a video. A real one. No filters, no script. You're gonna tell your followers everything. The wedding, Jennifer, all of it. Every lie, every manipulation. That would destroy my career, she whispered. Should have thought about that before you built it on lies. Please, Tessa. I'm not finished. After the video, you're going to tell Mom and Dad everything, too. They deserve to know who they've been defending all these years. Tears rolled down her cheeks. They'll hate me. Welcome to my world. A nurse knocked, entering with medication. I stood up to leave. You have until tomorrow to decide, I said. Your kidney, your choice. In the hallway, my parents waited anxiously. What's going on? Mom demanded. Jade's crying. Ask her, I replied. For once in your lives, ask her the real questions. I was halfway to the elevator when Jade's voice came over the hospital PA system. Tessa, wait, please come back. People in the hallway turned to stare. I kept walking. I'll do it. Her voice echoed through the building. I'll tell everyone everything. Just please, please don't leave. I stopped, my hand on the elevator button. Behind me, I heard confused murmurs from hospital staff and visitors. My parents stood frozen in the hallway, looking bewildered. Slowly, I turned around. Jade had dragged herself and her IV pole to her doorway, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. You're right, about everything. I'll do whatever you want. Just, please don't let me die. For the first time in our lives, I saw my sister without her carefully constructed mask. No filters, no performance, just raw, desperate truth. I walked back toward her room, past our shocked parents, past the staring nurses. Get your phone, I told her. It's time to start filming. Hey everyone. Jade's voice trembled as she spoke to her phone's camera. No filters today, no editing, just truth. I stood in the corner of her hospital room, arms crossed, while our parents sat stunned in the visitors' chairs. The heart rate monitor beeped steadily in the background. I've built my entire social media presence on a lie, she continued. Actually, I've built my entire life on lies, and it's time to come clean. She glanced at me. I nodded for her to continue. 5 years ago at my sister's wedding, I announced I was pregnant. The truth is, I wasn't. Her voice cracked. I bought a fake test, planned the whole thing just to steal her spotlight. And when I pretended to lose the baby 2 months later, I used that for attention too. Mom gasped. Dad's face went ashen. But that's not all. Jade wiped her tears. My successful business ideas, stolen from my college roommate Jennifer. My perfect life, carefully curated lies. The confession went on for 15 minutes. With each revelation, our parents seemed to physically shrink in their chairs. When Jade finally finished, her follower count was already dropping by the thousands. Comments are coming in, she whispered, staring at her phone. Unfollow. Disgusting. Cancel her. She looked up at me. Happy now? Before I could answer, the door burst open. A hospital PR representative rushed in, looking panicked. Miss Brewer, we're getting calls from media outlets. This video is going viral. Good, I said. Not good, she countered. Your sister's medical condition is now public knowledge, and there are allegations of organ donation coercion. This could become a legal nightmare. My stomach dropped. I hadn't considered that angle. Mom finally found her voice. Jade, how could you? The pregnancy, the wedding? I'm sorry, Jade whispered. Sorry doesn't begin to cover it, Dad stood up, looking older than I'd ever seen him. We defended you. For years we defended you. Dad, no. He held up his hand. I can't even look at you right now. They left the room, Mom sobbing, Dad supporting her. The PR representative followed, already on her phone with damage control. Jade's phone kept buzzing with notifications. My sponsors are dropping me, she said numbly. Everything I built? You mean everything you stole? You've ruined my life. No, I corrected her. You ruined your life. I just made you admit it. A new notification popped up on her phone. She stared at it, then started laughing, a hollow, desperate sound. What? I asked. It's trending. Jade Brewer is over party. She showed me the screen. But look at the comments under it. I took the phone. Among the hate and cancellation posts were other stories. Women sharing their experiences with toxic siblings, stories of wedding disasters, stolen opportunities, family betrayals. You've started something, Jade said quietly, but maybe I can make it mean something. What are you talking about? She sat up straighter, wiping her eyes. What if I used this? Really used it? Not for attention or likes, but to start a conversation about accountability, about toxic family dynamics? I scoffed. More manipulation? No, she met my eyes. Real this time, raw, honest, a movement about owning our mistakes and making amends. She grabbed her phone, hands shaking. I could go live right now, talk about why I did what I did, about growing up always feeling like I needed to be the center of attention, about therapy, about change. And this has nothing to do with saving your image? It has everything to do with saving my life, not just the kidney, my actual life, being honest for once. She looked at me pleadingly. Will you help me? Before I could answer, Jennifer appeared in the doorway. I saw the video, she said. Everyone's seeing it. Jade's face crumpled. Jennifer, Save it. Jennifer walked in, pulling up a chair. But I heard what you just said about starting a movement, about accountability. She glanced at me. Maybe it's not the worst idea. My phone buzzed. A text from Antonio. Have you seen Twitter? This is bigger than you and Jade now. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Behind the fear and desperation, I saw something I'd never seen before, a glimmer of genuine remorse. If we do this, I said slowly, it has to be real. No more performances. Jade nodded eagerly. I promise. And you'll get professional help? Already asked the nurse for therapist recommendations. Jennifer and I exchanged looks. The heart monitor kept its steady rhythm as we stood on the edge of something that felt bigger than our personal drama. Okay, I finally said, let's go live. We're trending in 27 countries, Remington announced, walking into Jade's hospital room with her laptop. 2 weeks had passed since the initial confession video, and what started as a scandal had evolved into something none of us expected. The Today Show called again, Jennifer added, not looking up from her phone. She'd become our unofficial media coordinator. They want both of you on Monday. Jade adjusted her hospital bed to sit up straighter. Despite the dialysis treatments, she looked stronger, more present. Maybe it was the weight of secrets lifting from her shoulders. What do you think? She asked me. Should we do it? Before I could answer, a notification pinged on the room's TV, which was streaming comments from our latest live session. My sister stole my college fund and my parents still defend her. Jade read aloud. Your story gave me the courage to finally confront them. That's the 5th story like that today, Jennifer noted. I watched another comment scroll past. Started therapy because of searing sisterhood accountability. Thank you for showing me it's okay to set boundaries. We should do the show, I decided. But no makeup team, no wardrobe styling. We do this our way. Jade nodded. Raw and real. A knock at the door interrupted us. Mom stood there, looking uncertain. Can I come in? The room fell silent. We hadn't seen our parents since the confession video. They'd been processing, according to their texts. Of course, Jade said softly. Mom walked in slowly, taking in the laptops, phones, and makeshift media center we'd created in the hospital room. I've been watching your videos, she said. All of them. The lives, the discussions about family dynamics. She took a shaky breath. I owe you both an apology. Mom, Jade started. No, let me finish. Mom pulled up a chair. I failed you, Jade, by never holding you accountable. And Tessa, her voice broke. I failed you by making you feel less important, less special. You were always the strong one because we never gave you a choice to be anything else. Remington quietly gathered her things. We'll give you guys some space. She and Jennifer slipped out, leaving us with our mother. Where's Dad? I asked. Still struggling, Mom admitted, but he's watching too. He even joined one of those online support groups for parents dealing with family conflict. Jade's phone buzzed. Another media request. She ignored it. I'm sorry, Mom, she said, for making you and Dad look foolish, for manipulating everyone. I'm sorry too, I added, for using the kidney as leverage. Don't apologize for that, Mom surprised us by saying. Sometimes it takes something dramatic to break unhealthy patterns. Look what you've created. She gestured to the TV, where the hashtag Sisterhood Accountability was still trending. Stories poured in from around the world. Sisters confronting decades of rivalry. Families beginning healing processes. People seeking therapy. We're getting messages from psychologists wanting to contribute, I explained. They're offering professional perspectives on sibling dynamics, family trauma. And people are actually listening, Jade added. Not just for the drama, but for the healing. A notification popped up on my phone, a message from one of my therapy clients. Watched your live session with your sister. Finally told my parents about my brother's bullying. They're getting him help. Mom read it over my shoulder. You two have started something important. We're thinking of turning it into a foundation, Jade said, using my platform for actual good this time, supporting family therapy programs, funding counseling for people who can't afford it. With proper credit to the people whose ideas we use, I added pointedly. Jade managed a small smile. Obviously. The door opened again. This time it was Antonio with lunch. Brought enough for everyone, he said, then noticed Mom. Oh, hello. Stay, Mom stood up. I should go anyway. Your father? We're having our first therapy session this afternoon. As she headed for the door, she turned back. Girls, I'm proud of you. Both of you. For different reasons. After she left, we divided up the sandwiches Antonio brought. Jade picked at hers, looking thoughtful. What is it? I asked. The Today Show appearance, she said. I want to use it to announce something. The foundation? No. She met my eyes. I want to tell everyone that I'm declining your kidney. Antonio dropped his sandwich. What? I can't take it, Jade continued. Not even with the confession, not even with the movement we've started. It needs to be my choice to face consequences. I stared at my sister, this new version of her I was just getting to know. The doctors say I can survive on dialysis while I wait for another donor, she added. It might take years, but maybe I need those years to prove I've really changed. Antonio squeezed my hand as I processed this. You'd do that? I asked. Give up a guaranteed donation? Jade nodded. It's time I saved myself instead of taking from others. For the first time in our lives, I saw my sister clearly, and she saw herself. The Today Show studio was smaller than I expected. Jade sat beside me on the interview couch, both of us makeup free as promised. The host, Maria, adjusted her earpiece as the producer counted down. 3, 2, 1. We're here with sisters Tessa and Jade, whose viral story about kidney donation and family accountability has sparked a global conversation. Maria began, "Ladies, thank you for being here. Thank you for having us," I replied, feeling the heat of the studio lights. "Jade, let's start with you. You're declining your sister's kidney donation. Why?" Jade took a deep breath. "Because true accountability means accepting consequences. I've spent my whole life taking from others, especially Tessa, taking her moments, her opportunities. I can't take her kidney too, even if it means waiting years for another donor." Even then, Jade's voice was steady. "Our movement, just sisterhood accountability, isn't just about confessing past wrongs. It's about doing the work to become better." Maria turned to me. "Tessa, how do you feel about your sister's decision?" Before I could answer, a commotion erupted backstage. Through the studio doors, I saw our father pushing past security. "Sir, you can't," a producer started. "Those are my daughters." Dad's voice carried across the set. Maria looked uncertainly at the cameras. "Should we cut?" "No," I said, standing up. "Let him come." Dad walked onto the set, looking lost under the bright lights. He hadn't shaved in days, and his eyes were red-rimmed. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he said, "but I've been watching everything from home, and I couldn't stay silent anymore." The studio was absolutely quiet. Even the cameramen seemed to be holding their breath. "Dad?" Jade's voice was small. He turned to face the cameras. "I'm these girls' father, and I need to be part of this accountability movement too, because I failed them both." Maria, ever the professional, gestured to an empty chair. "Would you like to join us?" Dad sat down heavily. I watched my youngest daughter hurt my oldest daughter over and over, and instead of stopping it, I made excuses. I told Tessa to be understanding, to be the bigger person. I put the responsibility of keeping peace on a child who deserved to be protected. Tears rolled down Jade's cheeks. I felt my own eyes burning. "And Jade," he continued, "I failed you by never teaching you consequences. I thought I was showing love, but I was teaching you that it was okay to hurt people, that you wouldn't have to face the results of your actions." Maria handed him a tissue. "You've been in therapy since this started?" "3 times a week," Dad nodded, "learning about enabling, about healthy family dynamics. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, looking at my own failures as a father." "It wasn't all failures," I found myself saying. "You loved us." "Love isn't enough," he replied. "You have to love people the right way, the way that helps them grow." Jade reached for his hand. "Dad." "No, let me finish." He straightened in his chair. "I've made a decision too. I'm going to get tested as a kidney donor." "What?" Jade and I said simultaneously. "You're my daughter, Jade. If anyone should make this sacrifice for you, it should be me, not your sister who you've already taken so much from." The studio lights suddenly felt too bright. Maria leaned forward, sensing the moment. "Would you be willing to share this journey with our viewers? The testing process, the therapy, the healing of your family?" I looked at Jade, then at our father. Something was shifting, like tectonic plates finally finding their proper alignment. "Yes," Jade said firmly, "but not as content, not as entertainment, as truth. Raw and real," I added, echoing our new motto. Dad squeezed Jade's hand. "Together this time, the right way." Maria turned to the camera. "We'll take a quick break and be right back with more from this extraordinary family." As soon as the red lights on the cameras went dark, Dad pulled both of us into a hug. It was awkward and tearful and real, everything our family had never allowed itself to be. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I'm so, so sorry." My phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from Jennifer. "Twitter's exploding. Your dad just took the Mauer sisterhood accountability to family accountability." Another message popped up from Remington. "This is what healing looks like. Real, messy, unscripted healing." The producer started counting down again. We pulled apart, wiping our eyes. "Ready to keep going?" Maria asked gently. I looked at my sister and my father, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time. No masks, no performances, no desperate grabs for attention or approval. Just three people doing the hard work of becoming better. "Ready," we said together. The red lights blinked on, and we continued our story, not for views or likes or trending hashtags, but for truth, for healing, for hope. "Testing complete," Dr. Rivera announced, looking up from her tablet. "Congratulations, sir. You're a match." Dad gripped the arms of his chair in the consultation room. Jade reached for his hand while I sat nearby, still processing the news. "What are the risks?" Mom asked from her corner seat. "Given his age and health, moderate, but manageable." Dr. Rivera turned to Dad. "The choice is yours." "No," Dad said firmly. "The choice is Jade's." My sister looked startled. "What do you mean?" "I'm offering my kidney," he explained. "But you need to decide if you're ready to accept it. Really ready." The accountability movement we'd started had grown beyond us. Our foundation now funded therapy for hundreds of families. Support groups had sprung up worldwide. But this moment, this was still deeply personal. "I've been in therapy for 3 months," Jade said slowly, "working on my narcissistic tendencies, my need for attention, my history of manipulation." She squeezed Dad's hand. "But I don't want to accept your kidney just to prove I've changed." "Then why would you accept it?" I asked. She met my eyes. "Because I want to live, not for followers or fame or approval. Just live. Do better. Be better." Dr. Rivera cleared her throat. "We don't need an answer today. You can—" "Yes," Jade interrupted. "I accept, if you're sure, Dad." He nodded. "I've never been more sure of anything." Mom started crying. Dr. Rivera began explaining the procedure schedule, but a commotion outside the office interrupted her. Jennifer burst in, waving her tablet. "Sorry to interrupt, but you all need to see this." She pulled up a video that was trending. A teenage girl speaking directly to camera. "Because of the Brewer Sisters movement, I finally told my parents about my brother's abuse. He's getting help now. We all are. Thank you for showing us that families can heal." Another video started automatically after it. "Watching Jade decline her sister's kidney taught me that sometimes love means not taking something, even if it's offered. I finally stopped letting my mom guilt me into giving her money she'll never pay back." And another, "My father's watching these videos about family accountability. Yesterday, he apologized to me for the first time in my life." The room fell silent as we watched story after story unfold. "This is bigger than us now," I said quietly. "But it started with us," Jade replied, "with you forcing me to face myself. With you choosing to change," I corrected. Dad cleared his throat. "Dr. Rivera, how soon can we schedule the surgery?" "Given the test results, we could do it next week." "No," Jade said firmly. "Not until after the Foundation's first family therapy retreat. I promised to speak there." I smiled, recognizing this new version of my sister, one who kept her commitments to others. "2 weeks then," Dr. Rivera made some notes. "I'll have my team contact you with details." As we left the hospital, reporters were waiting outside. They'd been following our story since the Today Show appearance. "Any comment on the test results?" "Is it true you're a match?" Dad stepped forward. "Yes, I'm a match, And yes, we're proceeding with the transplant. But more importantly, he looked at Jade and me. We're proceeding with healing, the right way this time. Later that evening, we gathered at my parents' house. Antonio brought dinner, Remington brought wine, and sparkling cider for Jade, who couldn't drink before surgery. And Jennifer brought her laptop to show us the latest foundation statistics. Over 10,000 families have signed up for sponsored therapy, she reported, and the accountability workshops are booked solid for 6 months. Speaking of accountability, Jade set down her glass. There's something I need to say. She turned to face me. Thank you, Tessa, not for offering your kidney, for refusing to let me have it without earning it, for making me face myself. You did the hard part, I said. No, she shook her head. You did the hard part for years, watching me take and take, being the understanding one. I'm sorry it took almost dying for me to see it. Mom wiped her eyes. We're all seeing things clearly now. To clarity, Antonio raised his glass. And to healing. To healing? We echoed. My phone buzzed. A message from Sarah, my teenage patient. Saw your sister's latest video about choosing change. Finally stood up to my sister today. Thank you for showing me how. I showed the message to Jade. She smiled, a real smile, not her old camera-ready one. We're going to keep helping people, aren't we? She asked. Yes, I said, but this time we do it together, as equals. Dad wrapped an arm around each of us. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Patterson's roses blooming in the evening light, the same roses I'd helped plant all those years ago. Some things take time to grow, I realized. Some things have to break through hard ground to reach the sun. But with truth, with work, with real love, everything can bloom eventually, even us, especially us.
The sweet aroma of pancakes wafted through the kitchen on this quiet morning. The soft May sunlight streaming through the window gently fell on James's shoulders as he read the newspaper at the table. His crisp Marine Corps uniform was always a sight of pride. The medals on his chest, telling the story of over 20 years of military service, gleamed in the morning light. Mom, lots of honey on my pancakes, please. I couldn't help but smile at Lily's voice as she came running down the stairs. My 12-year-old daughter had recently begun showing signs of growing up. Since starting middle school, she'd become conscious of her uniform skirt length and particular about her hairstyle. But her love for pancakes remained unchanged from her childhood. You're up early today, I called out to my daughter as I slid the pancakes onto a plate. On the kitchen counter sat Lily's lunchbox, which I had prepared the night before. Since Norfolk was already getting hot in May, I had made sandwiches for today. We're studying genetics in science class today. It's super interesting, Lily replied while adjusting her uniform tie. The gesture reminded me of her father somehow. Even without blood ties, living together for 12 years naturally leads to picking up each other's mannerisms. But I felt uneasy, as if this ordinary daily life was beginning to waver. Oh, that does sound interesting, James looked up from his newspaper with a gentle smile. The Marine Corps Times headline mentioned the upcoming Memorial Day ceremony. Every year at this time, the base was enveloped in a special tension. But, Lily continued hesitantly, my classmate Jenny says weird things. She says I don't look anything like Dad. My eyes are different, my hair color is different. A heavy silence fell over the kitchen for a moment. I thought I saw James's newspaper tremble slightly. Only the ceiling fan's whirring broke the stillness. That's not true, I quickly responded in a cheerful tone. Look, your serious nature and how organized you are. You're just like your dad. And your smile is exactly like his. Though Lily nodded slightly, her eyes were fixed on the family photo displayed on top of the china cabinet. In the picture, James had his hand on Lily's shoulder, wearing a proud smile. Next to it was another family photo taken at the base chapel, from the Christmas candlelight service. Well, I'm off to school. Lily quickly finished her pancakes and straightened her uniform collar. On her way to the door, she glanced up at the family photo once more. That look tugged at my heart. That night, I happened to glimpse Lily's smartphone search history. The words DNA testing, genetic testing, and 23andMe were lined up on the screen. I had also noticed her getting increasingly fidgety as Father's Day approached. Sometimes, when passing by her room at night, I could sense her trying to eavesdrop on our conversations through the door crack. Hidden in the back of the kitchen cabinet was an old album I hadn't shown anyone yet. In it were carefully preserved photos of Michael from his younger days. Maybe it's time we told her, James whispered softly in bed before sleep. His voice lacked its usual certainty. It's too soon, I responded immediately, though without conviction. In the light seeping from our daughter's room, I could sense her waiting for our decision. Saturday afternoon, I was preparing dinner in the kitchen. Tonight was James's favorite pot roast. The aroma of beef and potatoes already filled the room. James had finished mowing the lawn and was taking a shower. Through the kitchen window, I saw Lily retrieving mail from the mailbox. She had been checking the mail every day lately. What she held in her hands must be the DNA test results she had ordered online last week. Trying not to be noticed, I paused my vegetable chopping to watch her. Lily clutched the envelope to her chest and headed straight to her room. Her footsteps up the stairs seemed heavier than usual. My heart began to pound forcefully. About 10 minutes passed. Not a sound came from our daughter's room upstairs. The shower had stopped, and James came down to the living room. Seeing my expression, he seemed to understand immediately. It came. Those brief words carried deep meaning. I nodded slightly. Then, we heard faint sobbing from upstairs. Following that, footsteps descending the stairs. One step, then another. Each step tightened our hearts. When Lily appeared in the living room, her cheeks glistened with tear tracks. The sunlight from the window made those tears sparkle like diamonds. In her trembling hands, she held the crumpled envelope. Mom. Lily's voice quivered slightly. Dad. Dad isn't my real father, is he? Those words hung in the heavy air. Behind me, I could sense James's cold smile. I knew it was his way of masking deep love. The living room walls, illuminated by sunlight, were lined with photos of our memories. Lily's first day of school. James standing proudly with his hand on her shoulder. Him marching in his Marine Corps uniform at the base parade. A family photo in front of the Christmas tree. And in one corner, an old photograph, me with him in our younger days, both smiling. Lily's hands trembled. The paper she pulled from the envelope showed clear numbers. DNA match percentage. The numbers that should show genetic connection between father and daughter weren't there. What is this? Lily's voice rose. Her eyes held confusion, bewilderment, and a searching light. I stood up and walked to the bookshelf. There was an old album I had kept for years. The leather cover was peeling and yellowed in places, but the photos inside were carefully preserved. "Sit down, Lily," my voice was surprisingly steady. Behind me, I heard James take a deep breath. His cold smile had disappeared, replaced by an expression of deep love and resolution. With the album in hand, I sat on the sofa. Lily slowly sat beside me. The light streaming through the window was gradually changing angle. The grandfather clock ticked away, marking each beat of this crucial moment. "There's something I need to tell you." I opened the album. On the first page was a photo of me in my younger days with a man in Marine Corps uniform. Staff Sergeant Michael Taylor. Lily's biological father. The man who found eternal rest under Afghan skies that day. Outside, the roar of military aircraft returning to base echoed. It seemed like background music to the story about to be told. On the living room shelf, photos of two Marines, Michael and James, silently watched over the scene. One as a father connected by blood, the other as a father who had given love for 12 years. "Shall we begin?" At my words, Lily slowly nodded. Her hands were still trembling, but her eyes began to show strength to accept the truth. James stood watching over us from a slight distance. The sunlight gradually changed color, signaling the approach of dusk. The story about to be told would significantly change how our family existed. It was our family's story alone, where sadness and joy, despair and hope were intricately intertwined. As I turned the first page of the album, the summer sunlight of 1999 came flooding back. A small cafeteria within Naval Station Norfolk. I was 22, just starting work as an administrative staff member. Wearing my brand new ID card around my neck, each day was filled with fresh surprises. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" It was during lunch when I was looking for a seat with my salad. A young Marine in his crisp uniform smiled as he asked. That was my first encounter with Michael Taylor. "This is the ladies' section," I joked. He showed an unaffected smile and replied, "Then I'll make a reservation for tomorrow." He sat in the seat across from me. After that, Michael really did appear at the same time every day. His commanding officer imposed strict training, but he never compromised on lunch hour. Sometimes with sweat on his collar, sometimes covered in mud from training, but he always came to our promised seat. "Here's a map to the base chapel," he said one day, holding out a piece of paper. "Would you join me this Sunday?" That church service he invited me to with his shy smile became our first date. We hummed hymns together as the choir sang. That evening, watching the sunset at the base pier, he held my hand for the first time. "Will you marry me?" The proposal came 3 months later. At the base Memorial Park, at dusk. Michael knelt on one knee and opened a small box. A simple diamond ring sparkled in the sunset. "But you don't know me that well yet," I voiced my concern uncertainly. He looked at me with serious eyes and answered, "I want to spend a lifetime getting to know you." Our chapel wedding was small but warm. Michael's fellow Marines formed an arch of swords, blessing the newlyweds. Among them was young James Brown. He celebrated our new beginning as Michael's close friend. Our new home was military housing on base. Though it was a small house, it was filled with our dreams and hopes. On holidays, we'd shop at the nearby commissary and choose presents for each other at the base exchange. Michael would do DIY home repairs during his leave. In the small flower bed he built on the front porch, descendants of those flowers still bloom today. "I'm going to be a dad," Michael cried tears of joy the morning we found out about my pregnancy. His hands trembled but gently touched my stomach. "I promise I'll come back." The last breakfast before deployment. While cooking the usual pancakes, I held back my tears. Michael poured more maple syrup than usual, laughing, "It's been a while since I've had something this sweet." In his uniform pocket was the ultrasound picture of our baby, still too small to make out clearly. He called it his lucky charm. At departure, we shared our final embrace in front of the base gate. The sea breeze blew between us. "Take care." "Yes, I promise." Those became our last words to each other. 2 weeks later, in the morning, the doorbell rang, and 2 officers stood at the entrance. They removed their caps with solemn expressions. In that moment, I understood everything. "We regret to inform you." The words after that faded into the mist. The funeral was held in the same chapel as our wedding. Instead of an arch of swords, a flag-draped coffin lay before the altar. James stood beside me. As Michael's best friend, he supported me until the end. At Michael's grave in the military cemetery, he made a quiet vow. "I promise. I'll protect this family for both of us." From that day on, James visited every week. Sometimes he cooked, sometimes he was just there to talk. And above all, he cared for the baby growing in my womb as Michael would have. Because it's Michael's child, it's my family too. The day Lily was born, James was the first to rush to the hospital. As he held the tiny baby, there was clear determination in his eyes. "Please be her real father," I told him when Lily turned 1. After a long silence, James quietly nodded. "I will be this child's father for life." Lily's tiny hand firmly gripped her new daddy's finger. It was the beginning of a new family. The last page of the album contains a photo from that day. A family picture taken with Michael's memorial photo in the background. Past, present, and future captured in a single photograph. As the evening light painted the room red, I closed the last page of the old album. Traces of tears still glistened on Lily's cheeks. James stood by the window, gazing toward the base. "May I speak?" Breaking the silence was, surprisingly, James. He turned from the window and slowly walked to the sofa. Though not in uniform, his bearing still carried the dignity of a Marine Corps Master Gunnery Sergeant. Michael was my best friend and fellow Marine. James's voice was filled with deep remembrance. That day, he called me and said, "If anything happens to me, please take care of Amy and Lily." Lily caught her breath. There lay 25 years of memories of the man who became her father. We were in the same unit, went through the same training. We played baseball on leave days, sometimes argued. But he was always one step ahead of me. James stood up and took a notebook from the bookshelf. A standard Marine Corps issue notebook. The initials M. Taylor were engraved on the cover. This is his service diary. On the last page, there's a message for you both. Opening the notebook revealed Michael's elegant handwriting. To my beloved wife Amy. If you're reading this letter, it means I couldn't keep my promise. I'm so sorry I won't be able to see our baby's face. But this is my duty and pride as a Marine. To my unborn child. Dad loved you from the bottom of his heart. The emotion I felt seeing your ultrasound picture will stay with me forever. Even if I can't meet you in this world, my soul will watch over you eternally. To James. My friend, this is my final request. Please protect them. I know you'll make a wonderful father. Lily's hands trembled. Unlike when she gripped the DNA test results, this was a trembling born of deep emotion. Actually, James continued. At first, I hesitated. I wondered if I was worthy of carrying on Michael's will. He stood by the window, gazing toward the base illuminated by the sunset. But everything changed when Lily was born. The moment I held that tiny life, I knew this was my mission. James's voice quivered slightly. I still remember the first time you called me Daddy. It was the day before your second birthday. When I gave you the toy car present, you smiled brightly and said, "Thank you, Daddy." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes again. You were always there, when I fell at field day, at my middle school entrance ceremony, I quietly added. For 12 years, without missing a day, you made pancakes every morning. That's. James smiled somewhat sheepishly. I continued Michael's favorite morning routine. I wanted to preserve something of his memory. James stood up and walked to the two photos on the wall. One of young Michael, the other of himself now. Both in Marine Corps uniforms. Having two fathers is nothing to be ashamed of. Rather, it's something to be proud of. James's voice carried strong conviction. One father gave his life protecting our country and gave you life. The other father kept his promise to his friend and raised you with pure love for 12 years. Lily slowly stood and approached James. The sunset gently enveloped them both. Dad. At that word, James's eyes glistened. I never knew until now. How deeply connected Dad and Mom were by such profound love. Lily continued. When I saw the DNA results, I thought my world was falling apart. But now I'm proud. Proud to be the daughter of two brave fathers. I stood up and joined them. Outside the window, the flag waved quietly over the evening base. The sound of taps announcing retreat came from afar. "Shall we visit Michael's grave tomorrow?" They both quietly nodded at my suggestion. "There's somewhere I want to stop first." I took a photo frame from the living room shelf. "Michael and me on our wedding day. Let's take this too." A new chapter was being added to our family history. Not just a story of sadness, but one of love and pride. In the quiet dusk, our three hearts were surely connected. From the base came the sound of young soldiers training, carried on the wind. That sound seemed to overlap with Michael's voice from 25 years ago. Lily stood by the window, watching the base bathed in sunset. Her profile mysteriously resembled Michael's. Though not connected by blood, she was James's daughter of 12 years. And deep in her soul, she was surely Michael's daughter too. As the first star began twinkling in the night sky, Lily whispered softly, "You know, for Father's Day, I think I'll write 2 cards." At those words, we quietly smiled. Memorial Day morning light streamed through the kitchen window. A year had passed, and May had come around again. "Need help with the pancakes?" Lily called out while putting on her apron. At 13, our daughter was slowly climbing the steps toward womanhood. Her long hair was tied back, and a small American flag brooch sparkled on her chest. "Thank you. The jam's in the right cabinet." When I answered, Lily began preparations with practiced movements. Her gestures certainly resembled mine. Though not connected by blood, they were mannerisms naturally acquired through daily life. "You're early this morning," James came down the stairs. He was in his Marine Corps Honor Guard uniform for the traditional Memorial Day ceremony. Multiple medals gleamed on his chest, including the insignia from serving in the same unit as Michael. "Because today is special," Lily answered proudly. 3 plates were already set on the table. And one more, a small plate was placed before Michael's memorial photo. After breakfast, we got in the car. Our destination was Albert G. Horton Jr. Memorial Veterans Cemetery. Though we arrived earlier than usual, many cars were already lined up in the parking lot. At the cemetery, Lily walked ahead carrying a large bouquet. A small American flag had already been placed at Michael's gravestone. Base volunteers had set them up before dawn as a tribute to Gold Star families. "Dad, I'm here," Lily spoke softly. "The same place as last year." But her voice carried a different strength than it did last year. "You know, something really wonderful happened at school last week." Lily took a piece of paper from her uniform pocket. It was her speech contest manuscript from middle school. "My family," Lily began reading. "I have 2 fathers. One was a Marine who gave his life for our country. The other, also a Marine, raised me carrying on that will." The morning sun illuminated the gravestone, casting long shadows. "My biological father died in battle before I was born. But his courage and love live on in me today. And my other father, he raised me as his own daughter, keeping a promise to his friend and out of pure love." Lily's voice trembled slightly. Blood ties are just one form of family bonds. When I learned the truth, I was confused for a while. But now I'm proud. Proud to have two brave fathers. And proud to have a mother who loved them both. The speech continued. My family's story isn't just about DNA. It's a story of love, courage, and faithfulness. The Marine Corps motto, Semper Fidelis, is the very essence of how my family lives. When she finished reading, quiet applause could be heard. Looking back, we saw that many military families had gathered around us. Among them were some of Michael's former comrades. This speech won first place, Lily said somewhat shyly. Then she placed the trophy in front of the gravestone. This is for you, Dad. James's eyes glistened slightly. In the afternoon, we attended the base parade. James marched as part of the honor guard while Lily and I watched from the stands. Mom, Lily said in a small voice. I've decided. I want to become a Navy nurse. To care for those wounded in battle. Behind that decision surely lay her thoughts of both fathers. At dusk, we had a small barbecue in our yard. Similar scenes could be seen throughout the base housing area. It had become a Memorial Day tradition. A new family album lay on the table. The cover read, Our Family, Past, Present, and Future. The first page showed young Michael and me, followed by photos from when I married James. With each turn of the page, Lily's growth and our new family's history unfolded. Oh, a shooting star! Lily called out as she gazed at the night sky. I made 3 wishes. One for each of my dads, and one for Mom. Moths gathered around the porch light. In the old flower bed Michael had built, early summer flowers bloomed gloriously. Beside them, new seedlings James had planted this year were beginning to grow. 2 photographs sat side by side on the living room shelf. Michael and James. The evening sun cast strangely similar colors on both their photos. Dad and Dad look alike, don't they? Lily suddenly said. They have the same smile. Indeed, both photos showed the same warm smile. It was that special smile reserved for thinking about family. An expression that showed a connection of souls transcending blood ties. The night deepened. From the base came the sound of taps announcing lights out. Lily had already gone to sleep. On the table lay her unfinished Father's Day cards. 2 cards, one for her dad in heaven, one for her dad on earth. Can't sleep. James gently placed his hand on my shoulder. Just feeling too blessed, I answered. Outside the window, the early summer breeze gently swayed the garden flowers. It seemed to herald the arrival of a new season. Semper Fidelis, James whispered softly. Those words resonated like an eternal pledge to our family. The pristine white 2-story house in Newton's upscale residential area, Massachusetts, looked as if it had stepped right out of a postcard. In January's bitter cold, smoke from the fireplace dissolved into the winter sky. Snow from the previous day had accumulated in the garden, and icicles on the street trees sparkled with light. In this educational district near Boston College, the lively voices of students occasionally carried on the wind. Caroline Wilson sat on the sofa wrapped in a warm blanket, her hand resting on her swollen belly. 8 months pregnant, she continued her work as a graphic designer from home while trying to maintain bed rest. Her MacBook screen displayed logo design proposals for major New England corporations. Her artistic sense, honed at the Boston School of Art, had earned her clients deep trust, making the transition to remote work seamless. "Mom, I made you some tea," said her 9-year-old daughter Lily, gently placing a warm cup of chamomile tea on a coaster. A top student at Ward Elementary School, she was like a little nurse, always mindful of her mother's condition. Still in her school uniform after finishing her piano lesson, the key hanging from her neck gleamed like a badge of responsibility. "Thank you, Lily. I don't know what I'd do without you." Caroline smiled, and Lily beamed with pride. The aroma of apple pie, brought over by Mrs. Johnson from next door, filled the room with warmth. The neighborhood connections that began through PTA meetings had become a strong support system in this community. Just then, the sound of a BMW X7's engine echoed in the garage. It was time for her husband Gregory to return home. Though he'd been coming home after 7 lately, today was unusually early. "Dad's home." Lily ran to the entrance as Gregory, the Boston branch manager of Prudential Insurance, walked in looking tired. His dark gray suit was custom-tailored, and he carried a briefcase. The dignity of an elite insurance executive earning over $300,000 annually was always evident in his bearing. "I'm home," his voice sounded distant. He skipped his usual habit of patting Lily's head. As the bells of First Baptist Church of Newton rang in the distance, Gregory suddenly handed Lily a box. "Lily, this is a present from Dad." Inside was the latest iPad Pro. An expensive gift out of the blue, neither for Christmas nor birthday. While Lily exclaimed in surprise, Caroline felt uneasy about her husband's sudden gesture. The guilt lurking in his eyes triggered her intuition. "It's proof of Dad's love," Gregory said, quickly disappearing into his study. His gesture of loosening his tie carried an unfamiliar urgency. That night, as Caroline lay in bed, she reflected on her husband's recent behavior. His returns home had gradually gotten later, and rumors of increased dinners with young female employees had reached her ears. She had been secretly informed by another employee's wife about notably frequent dinners with a new hire named Diana. Looking at the family photo on the mantelpiece, she suppressed her anxiety. Their carefree smiles from last summer's vacation in Cape Cod now felt like a distant memory. With the risk of premature labor and doctor's orders for bed rest, Caroline had no energy to pursue the truth. As she felt her child move inside her, their peaceful days seemed as fragile as walking on thin ice. On January 15th, the cry of new life echoed through a private room at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. Caroline, rushed in with contractions a week before her due date, safely delivered a 6-pound boy after 4 hours of labor. From the large windows of the maternity ward, Boston's cityscape stretched out before her. Snow that had begun falling early morning had painted the entire city white. As Caroline held her baby from the incubator, listening to his soft breathing, she was enveloped in deep relief. "Congratulations, Mrs. Wilson. He's a very healthy boy." Dr. Sarah Cohen, her attending physician, watched over mother and child with a warm smile. Caroline was truly grateful for choosing this hospital with its well-equipped neonatal intensive care unit. "The baby is absolutely adorable." Jane Smith, a fellow PTA member who visited the room, gazed tenderly at the baby. Members of the First Baptist Church of Newton's women's group came one after another to offer congratulations, filling the room with bouquets. However, amidst this joyful atmosphere, there was one person who carried a dark shadow. At 3 in the afternoon, when Lily visited during visiting hours, Caroline immediately noticed something was wrong. Her usual bright smile was gone, and her small uniformed figure seemed to tremble as if caught in a cold wind. "Lily, what's wrong? Don't you want to meet the baby?" When Caroline called out, Lily wouldn't come closer, standing frozen near the door, clutching her iPad tightly. Her hands were trembling slightly. "Mom." Lily's voice quivered. Under the soft hospital room lighting, her daughter's face looked paler than usual. "Lily, come here. This is your precious little brother." As Caroline gently beckoned, tears welled up in Lily's eyes. "Mom, please don't bring the baby home." Caroline couldn't believe her ears at the sudden outburst. "Why? He's your precious little brother, isn't he?" Caroline tried to maintain her smile, but her anxiety grew at her daughter's unusual behavior. Lily held out her trembling hands with the iPad. "Look at this." Small fingers pressed the play button. The first voice she heard was her husband Gregory's. It was colder than any tone Caroline had ever heard from him. "Let's proceed with the plan, Diana. After the baby is born." A young woman's voice followed. "But can we really do this? Making it look like an accident. The insurance is already arranged. $25,000. This will start our new life." The recording continued. A detailed plan to stage a newborn's fatal accident. Insurance fraud arrangements. Gregory and Diana's future plans. Everything was meticulously recorded. The color drained from Caroline's face. The baby's fussing in her arms seemed to come from far away. Outside the hospital room window, the snow was intensifying. The Boston cityscape viewed from the 10th floor seemed to dissolve into white fog. Just then, a long, sharp ambulance siren echoed from the direction of the nurse's station. "Mom." "I was scared." Lily's voice broke the frozen air. "Dad changed, but I thought no one would believe me without evidence." Caroline gently laid the baby in bed and held Lily tightly. Her daughter's small body was trembling. The thought of a 9-year-old girl carrying such pressure alone made her chest tighten. "You did so well, Lily. You did so very well." In her mother's arms, Lily's tears began to flow uncontrollably. All her fear, anxiety, and desperate desire to protect her mother and brother were finally released. On the bed, the newborn baby breathed peacefully, unaware of anything. Caroline's heart froze at the fact that this innocent life had almost been taken away. "Lily, Mommy will definitely protect you and the baby." Caroline pressed the nurse call button with trembling hands. First, she needed to contact the hospital's social worker. Then the police. She needed to submit evidence and request emergency protection for mother and children. In Caroline's mind, plans for the next steps were already being calmly assembled. "Lily, can you tell me everything?" Caroline asked quietly, gently holding her daughter's shoulders. The room's curtains were drawn, and social worker Julia Morrison sat in a chair, supportively close to mother and daughter. "I first noticed," Lily began in a trembling voice. In her small eyes floated memories she hadn't been able to confide in anyone until now. "It happened 2 weeks ago." Lily returned home earlier than usual after her after-school piano lesson at Ward Elementary School. When she noticed unfamiliar women's high heels at the entrance, anxiety had already sprouted in her heart. "I heard Dad's voice, but his laughter was different." From the living room leaked her father's voice, unlike any she'd heard before. Lily, who had taken up video editing on her iPad as a hobby 3 months earlier, instinctively started the recording app. It was less childlike curiosity than a premonition that something serious was happening. That person's name was Diana. She seemed to be from Dad's company. The social worker carefully took notes of Lily's testimony. Outside the window, dusk was creeping over Boston. From the first recording, Lily gradually documented her father's changes. Diana visiting their home twice a week. Intimate conversations in the living room. And gradually, the horrifying details of the plan emerged. Dad said it was the perfect plan. Lily's voice broke off. To make it look like an accident right after the baby was born. Caroline closed her eyes involuntarily. Her husband's plan to murder their newborn child. The inhumanity of it froze her heart. The night before Mom went to the hospital, they were having their final meeting. Lily operated the iPad with trembling hands and played the decisive recording. There, the detailed plan for insurance fraud was meticulously recorded. The procedure for staging the newborn's fall accident, claiming the high insurance payout. Creating the perfect alibi at the hospital. Everything had been carefully planned. I was scared, but I knew I had to protect the baby. Large tears fell from Lily's eyes. Her small body trembled in her mother's arms. Social worker Julia maintained her professional composure, but deep sympathy showed in her eyes. "Lily, you're such a brave girl. But why didn't you tell anyone until now?" Caroline asked gently while stroking her daughter's hair. Lily hesitated for a moment, then answered in a small voice. "I was worried about the baby in your tummy. The doctor said Mom needs rest, remember?" Those words tightened Caroline's chest. The reality that a 9-year-old girl had carried this burden alone, even considering her mother's health. The pressure must have been unimaginable. Also, "I thought no one would believe me without solid evidence," Lily continued. "So I saved all the iPad recordings. That was smart thinking, Julia nodded quietly. With this much evidence, the police will act immediately. Just then, hurried footsteps were heard from the direction of the nurse's station. "Ma'am, the police have arrived," a nurse announced quietly. Caroline took a deep breath. "Lily, things might get a bit difficult from here. But Mommy will definitely protect you and the baby." Beyond the hospital room door, detectives from the Newton Police Department were already waiting. Gregory still didn't know his plan had been exposed. He must be at work now, going about his business as if nothing was wrong. "Ma'am, may we take your daughter's statement?" a police officer asked politely. Caroline nodded silently. Her heart was already steeled for the long battle ahead. The baby, wrapped in a warm blanket, continued to breathe peacefully, unaware of anything. "Lily, you're truly an amazing daughter," Caroline embraced her daughter tightly. "Mommy is so proud of you." In the hospital room overlooking Boston's cityscape, mother and daughter held hands tightly. The Massachusetts Supreme Court courtroom was filled with a solemn atmosphere. Sunlight of deep winter filtered through the windows into the courtroom lined with heavy wooden furnishings. Lily's small back stood straight with tension at the witness stand. Events had moved faster than expected. Gregory's arrest came just 4 hours after Lily's revelation at the hospital. Detectives who appeared at the Prudential Insurance Office apprehended branch manager Gregory Wilson amid the shocked expressions of employees. Diana Collins was arrested the same day at her family home in Connecticut. When did the witness first notice the anomaly that led to this incident? Prosecutor Michael Brown's voice echoed through the courtroom. 2 weeks ago. Though small, Lily's voice was clear. "From the day Dad suddenly gave me an iPad." The house search revealed further evidence. Multiple life insurance policies found in Gregory's study. Notes detailing future plans with Diana. And a detailed manual for staging the accident. Everything had seemed like a perfect plan. "Why did you start recording?" Lily glanced momentarily at her mother sitting in the courtroom. Caroline nodded slightly in encouragement. The baby was being cared for by Caroline's mother. Dad had changed. The kind dad became a cold person. The prosecution carefully established the legitimacy of Lily's recordings. The results of voice analysis. The consistency of recording dates and times. And the specificity of the content. All completely negated any possibility of fabrication or manipulation. When did the defendant Gregory Wilson begin planning the murder? The prosecutor's question was answered by Diana on the witness stand. She had already agreed to a plea deal with the prosecution. From last October. When Gregory learned of his wife's pregnancy, the plan. A shock ran through the courtroom. Judge John Murphy listened to the testimony with a stern expression. "Why did you participate in such a plan?" "Gregory promised us a future. Said we'd start a new life with the insurance money." Diana's testimony revealed the full scope of the incident. The total life insurance Gregory had contracted was $250,000. The plan was to stage the newborn's death by falling and fraudulently obtain the insurance money. With that money, the two planned to start a new life. But did you really believe this plan could be executed? Diana's expression crumbled at the prosecutor's pursuit. At first I thought it was a joke. But Gregory was serious. He promised to pay off my family's debts too. In the corner of the courtroom, Caroline quietly closed her eyes. 15 years of marriage. The home they had built together. Everything was about to crumble before her husband's calculating desires. Next, please explain the circumstances of the insurance contracts. The prosecution meticulously exposed Gregory's insurance fraud plan. Contracts with multiple insurance companies. Unnaturally high coverage amounts. Everything was built up as a complete chain of evidence. The defense tried to argue the illegality of the recordings, but it was determined there was no illegality in Lily's recordings made within their home. Gregory's lawyer attempted to argue temporary impairment of judgment due to mental stress, but the meticulousness of the plan completely negated that. How did you feel after noticing the changes in your father? To the prosecutor's final question, Lily answered straight. I was scared. But I knew I had to protect the baby and Mom. At those words, the jurors' expressions softened. The courage of a 9-year-old girl had changed the atmosphere in the courtroom. The verdict came surprisingly quickly. The defendant Gregory Wilson is hereby sentenced to 15 years in prison for attempted murder, attempted insurance fraud, and all related charges. Judge Murphy's voice resonated through the courtroom. Co-defendant Diana Collins is sentenced to 7 years in prison, taking into account the terms of her plea agreement. At the moment of sentencing, tears flowed from Caroline's eyes. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief that everything was over. As they left the courtroom, Boston's sky was dyed a deep indigo. The bells of First Baptist Church of Newton could be heard in the distance. Mom, are we okay now? Lily held her mother's hand. Yes, we're safe now, Caroline embraced her daughter. Thanks to you, the baby and we are all protected. As they descended the courthouse steps, a new life stretched out before mother and daughter. Amid the flashing cameras of reporters, Caroline felt strongly, this wasn't an ending, but a new beginning. 1 year later, spring in a quiet residential area of Cambridge, Massachusetts. From a 3-story brownstone overlooking the Charles River, the presence of a family awakening with the morning light wafted through the air. Good morning, Thomas, Caroline kissed her 1-year-old son's cheek. It's a beautiful morning today. This new home, close to Harvard Square, was found with help from the members of First Baptist Church of Newton. The church community had been dedicatedly supporting their new life. Mom, I warmed Thomas's milk. Calling from the kitchen, Lily had grown into a reliable 10-year-old girl. She had adapted wonderfully to Cambridge Public School after transferring from Ward Elementary School. Now she served as a student council officer and had even started an iPad video production club. Thank you, Lily. You're such a wonderful big sister. Warm sunlight streamed onto the Sunday morning breakfast table. The fragrant aroma rising from the toaster. The gentle sound of the coffee maker. Everything had become part of their new daily routine. Caroline's home-based graphic design business had achieved unexpected success. Many of her former clients continued to support her, and new clients were steadily increasing. Her home office space was equipped with the latest iMac and drawing tablet, functioning as a creative workspace. "Hey Mom, there's the church picnic this afternoon, right?" Lily asked while drinking her orange juice. "Yes, it's the celebration of 1 year since Thomas's baptism." Caroline smiled as she placed pancakes on the table. Over the past year, the church community had become their spiritual support. The weekly Sunday services had become precious moments of peace for their souls. "Lily, do you remember? Around this time last year, when we moved here." "Of course." Everyone from the neighborhood came to help. On moving day, church members arrived one after another to help carry in furniture. Some brought homemade casseroles and apple pies. The warm welcome was the greatest encouragement for mother and children who felt anxious about starting a new life in an unfamiliar place. "We've grown stronger," Caroline gazed out the window. The Charles River's surface sparkled in the morning sun. Once a week, mother and children attend family counseling. It's an essential process for overcoming trauma and building their new life. Dr. Sarah Green, their counselor, particularly praised Lily's recovery. "Lily, your courage gave us a new life." At her mother's words, Lily smiled somewhat shyly. Notifications of letters from Gregory, who continues to refuse visits, occasionally appear on her smartphone. But they're no longer afraid. "Mom, we're happy now, aren't we?" Caroline nodded deeply at Lily's words. Thomas showed an innocent smile in his high chair. His gestures sometimes heal the hearts of mother and daughter. While preparing for the afternoon picnic, Caroline offered a private prayer. Gratitude for these peaceful days. Blessings for family bonds. And guidance for the path ahead. The new family photo by the entrance captured the happy smiles of the three. It was proof of genuine happiness given only to those who have overcome trials. "Well, shall we go?" Caroline lifted Thomas and took Lily's hand. By the Charles River, the spring breeze gently caressed their cheeks. The painful past was becoming a distant memory. Now, a future full of hope stretched out before them. The church bells rang through the quiet Sunday morning. While announcing the beginning of a new day, it was also a blessing that brought peace to wounded hearts. Mother and daughter began walking, holding hands tightly. This was the path they had chosen. And this was the true form of family. "Grandma, look!" Noah's carefree smile beamed through the tablet screen. In the schoolyard where they were practicing for the sports festival, the autumn sunlight sparkled on the trees that were beginning to show their fall colors. His pristine white polo shirt, navy shorts, and knee-high socks, the private school uniform made my grandson look even more dignified. "That's wonderful, Noah. You were chosen for the relay team." "Yes. I'm running the last leg. They call it the anchor. Teacher says I'm fast." I couldn't help but smile. In my days working as an emergency room nurse, every moment was filled with tension. It was routine to witness critical moments when patients in cardiac arrest were brought in, their lives hanging in the balance. But now, watching my grandson grow has become my life's greatest joy. These past 3 years have been lonely since losing my husband George. However, Noah's smile and Melissa's kindness have become my emotional anchor. After retirement, I had been living quietly in a peaceful Boston suburb. A call came in from Melissa. My daughter's voice sounded somewhat tired. Her usual vibrant tone was gone, replaced by what seemed like a lack of energy. "What's wrong? Work keeping you busy?" "Oh, well. New properties keep coming in." I detected a hint of resignation in my daughter's words. She had always been so positive and full of energy as a top-performing real estate agent. Lately, though, this hollow demeanor had been concerning me during our calls. "And Thomas? Is he home much these days?" "He's been working late a lot. A new project started." The silence embedded in that response carved worry into my heart. The changes in my son-in-law had begun about 6 months ago. When we received news of his promotion, we had all celebrated together. But after that, he gradually began to change. As I drove toward Philadelphia, I was lost in thought. My daughter's house in the prestigious Main Line area was indeed impressive. A grand Tudor-style mansion, a meticulously maintained front yard, a garage housing a new Lexus and BMW. They spent weekends golfing at the local country club and hosted family gatherings for Thanksgiving. On the surface, it was the perfect upper-class lifestyle. But true happiness isn't about material things. That thought weighed even more heavily on my mind. "Mom, I got new shoes." The shoes Noah showed me during our video call were indeed fancy brand name ones. But seeing Melissa's downcast expression in the background tugged at my heart. It pained me to see her trying to distract her son with expensive things. "You'll definitely come to the sports festival, right? Promise." After ending the call with Noah, I opened the calendar on my smartphone and marked October 12th. My heart was already dancing in anticipation of that day. However, an urgent matter came up the day before the sports festival. A longtime friend had been rushed to the hospital. I immediately went to visit my friend. After learning that their condition had stabilized, I felt relieved. I bought a Lego set as a gift for Noah, who loves them, and got in my car. As I drove south on the highway, I was praying for the success of the sports festival. Melissa was holding Noah's hand as they left the school gates. The cold autumn wind caressed their cheeks. "Mom, you came to pick me up early today." "Yes, today's special. It's the day before the sports festival." The warmth of her son's hand brought comfort to Melissa's heart. Recently, her relationship with her husband Thomas had grown cold. But these moments spent with Noah were her irreplaceable happiness. "Will Dad come home early too?" That question made Melissa stumble over her words for a moment. Last night too, Thomas hadn't come home until late. The unfamiliar perfume on his shirt. Suspicious calls on his cell phone. She had noticed it all. "Well, shall we try calling Dad?" Melissa sighed as she gripped the Lexus's steering wheel. 10 years of marriage. She thought everything had been going well. Real estate sales were climbing, her husband had been promoted to vice president at the investment bank, and Noah was attending a prestigious private elementary school. But, Mom, I'm hungry. Then let's bake cookies when we get home. Grandma's coming tomorrow too. Yay! Grandma Elizabeth. The car moved through the quiet streets of the upscale neighborhood. The fall-colored street trees were beautiful in the evening light. Melissa's thoughts turned to her mother Elizabeth. Though her mother had worked tirelessly as a nurse, she always put family first. Did she herself have that kind of strength now? Melissa pulled into the garage and stepped into the house. Thomas. She heard sounds from the living room. She had noticed her husband's car in the garage. Wasn't he supposed to be on a business trip? Noah, go change in your room. Watching her son run up the stairs, Melissa headed toward the living room. When she opened the door, her body froze. Two figures intertwined on the sofa. Thomas and a young woman. A small sound escaped Melissa's throat. The two hurriedly separated. When Melissa saw the woman's face, she understood everything. Rachel Smith. Thomas's subordinate. An analyst at the investment bank. Melissa, this is. Rachel stood up, cutting off Thomas's words. Her refined features were coldly set, her eyes harboring sharp hostility. Hello, Mrs. Anderson. We finally meet. Her voice dripped with unfathomable hatred. Rachel, stop. Ignoring Thomas's attempt to stop her, Rachel stepped closer. As she buttoned her expensive blouse, she wore a malicious smile. Did you know? Thomas and I have been together for over 6 months. While you've been keeping him tied down with family life, we've been. Shut up. Melissa's scream echoed. A vase fell, water seeping into the carpet. Mom. Noah's worried voice from the top of the stairs. Noah, stay in your room. At that moment, Rachel's expression changed completely. Ah, your precious son. Thomas showed me his pictures. He's cute. But our child will be. Stop. This time, it was Thomas who shouted. What are you saying, Rachel? The agreement was. Agreement? Don't be ridiculous. I bet my career, my future, everything on you. Rachel's voice cracked. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Having completely lost control of her emotions, she stormed into the kitchen. Let's end this. All of it. The knife she pulled from the drawer reflected the evening light. Rachel, calm down. By the time Thomas tried to stop her, it was already too late. Mom. Noah's scream as he ran down the stairs. Rachel's arm swung up. Melissa instinctively twisted away. A sharp pain pierced her side. Warm liquid soaked her blouse. As Noah ran toward them, Rachel's arm moved again. Noah, watch out. Melissa summoned her last strength to shield her son. The second blade caught her in the back. Melissa! Thomas's scream. He desperately grabbed Rachel's arm. The knife fell to the floor from her struggling hands. Blood-covered Melissa barely managed to stay standing as she pulled Noah's hand. Second floor, storage room. Mother and son crawled up the stairs. Rachel's confused screams echoed throughout the house. What are we going to do, Thomas? Our relationship, the company. Calm down. First, we need to get rid of the evidence. The two frantically wiped away the blood trails. Thomas, in a panic, moved around trying to contain the situation. There's no time. Through the back door. In the chaos, Rachel didn't even notice she had dropped her smartphone. They hurriedly fled through the back door. I pulled the car over to the curb and turned off the engine. The porch light was on. But behind the curtains, it was dark. Walking toward the entrance, I took out my cell phone. There was a missed call from Melissa. I tried calling back immediately, but couldn't get through. Melissa? Noah? About to insert my key, I stopped my hand. The door was slightly open. The shadows of trees swaying in the wind and rain eerily illuminated the gap in the half-open door. Something's wrong. When I opened the entrance, cold air enveloped me. Is anyone here? Melissa? No response. The house was wrapped in an unusual silence. None of the usual sounds, the TV, kitchen noises, Noah's energetic voice, could be heard. Entering the living room, I was confronted by the devastation. A vase on the coffee table had fallen, flower petals scattered on the water-soaked carpet. The family photo frame Melissa treasured had been thrown to the floor, its glass shattered. My foot stepped on something. I crouched down to examine the object that had been hard to see in the dim light. A smartphone. Though the screen was cracked, the lock screen displayed a photo of an unfamiliar woman. Late 20s, perhaps. A beautiful woman with refined features. The next moment, I caught my breath. Small bloodstains dotted the floor leading to the kitchen. Fresh blood trails. Not yet completely dry. With trembling hands, I considered calling 911. But first, I had to check. Find Melissa and Noah. Melissa. Noah. Where are you? My voice echoed emptily. The same blood trails continued up the stairs to the second floor. There were marks on the handrail too, as if someone had grabbed it. Dark red stains marred the white paint. Slowly climbing the stairs. One step, then another. Each creak of the wooden stairs made my heart pound violently. The second floor hallway was dim. Only the small display of the wall-mounted thermostat cast a faint light. The bedroom door was open. It was dark inside, with no sign of people. The bed was disheveled, drawers roughly pulled open. Melissa's clothes were scattered on the floor. Noah's room was the same. His Lego collection, usually neatly arranged, was scattered as if kicked around. The Superman bedding was torn, the pillow stained with blood. Noah. A cry escaped my throat. Then, I heard a faint sound. From the second-floor storage room. I moved in that direction, holding my breath. Stopping before the old wooden door. My hands were shaking. Sweat trickled down my back. I gripped the doorknob. The rusty hardware felt cold. Slowly opening the door. In the dim corner of the storage room, a small figure was trembling. A blood-soaked t-shirt. A face buried in hugged knees. Noah. Slowly raising his face in response to my voice. A pale face. Tear-stained cheeks. Trembling lips. And eyes wide with terror. Grandma. A thin voice echoed from the darkness. It's all right, Grandma's here now. Noah, are you hurt? Yes. I'm okay. I carefully approached and checked my grandson's body. Though there was a slight cut on his arm, there didn't seem to be any life-threatening injuries. Most of the blood on his clothes appeared to be someone else's. Where are Mom and Dad? At that question, Noah's body shook even more violently. Blue lips. I unconsciously held Noah tightly. Police sirens cut through the rainy cityscape. Elizabeth, still holding the trembling Noah, remained huddled in the corner of the storage room. It's okay. You're safe now. Elizabeth gently stroked her grandson's hair, trying to regain the composure she had cultivated during her nursing days. The sound of police climbing the stairs. Flashlight beams cutting through the darkness of the hallway. Over here. Responding to Elizabeth's voice, the officers rushed over. Detective Chief Murphy, a veteran officer, immediately assessed the situation. A young female officer gently spoke while wrapping Elizabeth and Noah in blankets. Are you all right? Any injuries? I'm fine. My grandson just has minor cuts. But my daughter. Melissa. Elizabeth gently restrained Noah as he tried to stand up. Let's leave it to them now. The paramedics will help. Amid the paramedics' shouted instructions, Melissa's face was pale as she was lifted onto the stretcher, her lips showing signs of cyanosis. But her eyes were slightly open. Noah. Mom. Melissa. Hang in there. Elizabeth instinctively tried to rush over but was stopped by an officer. We need your cooperation with the investigation first. We have to preserve the crime scene. Elizabeth nodded deeply at Detective Murphy's words. Yes. Now she needed to stay calm and provide as much information as possible. Surveillance cameras installed throughout the upscale neighborhood had captured the escape vehicle's movements. Elizabeth reported about the smartphone found in the living room. Rachel Smith, analyst at First Liberty Investment Bank. A surprising amount of information was found in the smartphone. Numerous intimate photos with Thomas. Scenes from company meetings. And explicit messages exchanged between the two. Officers moved quickly through the first floor, which had become an investigation headquarters. Then, Elizabeth's cell phone rang. Elizabeth. It's Jim O'Connor. The voice of her friend of 30 years, the head of security at Philadelphia International Airport. Emergency tickets have been issued under the name of Thomas Anderson, Vice President of First Liberty Bank. First class to Dubai. 1 hour until takeoff. Elizabeth's spine froze. And the woman? Rachel Smith. Business class on the same flight. This information was immediately relayed to the police. Police vehicle sirens cut through the darkness one after another, heading to the airport. Thomas and Rachel were waiting nervously in the airport's VIP lounge. Faint bloodstains still remained on their clothes. "It's okay. Soon," Rachel said in a trembling voice. Her luxury brand handbag was stuffed with hastily withdrawn cash and precious metals. "Now we can." At that moment, the lounge doors burst open. Officers with drawn guns rushed in. "No. This is..." As Thomas tried to explain, Rachel let out a scream. "It's your fault. All your fault. You promised. Together with me." Her screams echoed through the silent lounge. Other passengers watched in terror. Thomas's voice echoed emptily as he was handcuffed. Meanwhile, Rachel had completely lost control. "I'll kill her. I'll kill that woman." Meanwhile, at the hospital, Melissa's condition has stabilized. Elizabeth let out a deep sigh at the emergency doctor's report. Noah had fallen asleep exhausted on his grandmother's lap. Elizabeth quietly shed tears while watching her grandson's sleeping face. Outside, the autumn rain continued to fall. But the worst of the storm had finally passed. Several weeks later at the Philadelphia District Court, tension hung in the solemn courtroom. Judge Richardson slowly reviewed the documents on the bench. Reporters who had been following the case sat in the gallery. Elizabeth had her hand on her daughter Melissa's shoulder. Thomas Anderson and Rachel Smith stood up. Their once refined appearance was gone, replaced by orange prison uniforms, their faces showing signs of fatigue. "I will now pronounce sentence on the defendant Rachel Smith." The courtroom fell silent. For attempted murder, breaking and entering, and assault. 15 years imprisonment. Rachel's face contorted. Her parents turned away in the gallery. For the defendant Thomas Anderson. This time, Melissa stared intently at her former husband. For aiding and abetting attempted murder, and breaking and entering. 12 years imprisonment. Noah gripped his mother's hand tightly. Outside the courtroom, media had gathered. Headlines blazed: First Liberty Bank VP gets prison term for attempted murder with mistress, upper-class betrayal and violence. Elizabeth moved through the press, protectively shielding her family. That night, in Melissa's apartment. "So it's over now," Melissa whispered quietly as she sat on the living room sofa. Though the scars on her back hadn't fully healed, her emotional wounds seemed to be healing gradually. "It's a new beginning," Elizabeth answered while preparing hot chocolate in the kitchen. In February, a big change arrived. "I got an offer from the Boston Real Estate Association," Melissa began. I want to get away from the Philadelphia memories. And I want to raise Noah near you, Mom. Elizabeth instinctively hugged her daughter. With the arrival of spring, a new life began. In the Brookline district of Boston. In a quiet residential area just 10 minutes by car from Elizabeth's house, Melissa set up her new office. Anderson Real Estate Consulting. Keeping her husband's surname, she began walking a new path on her own. Grandma, look. Noah quickly adapted to his new school. He made new friends, and his smile returned. After school, he does his homework at Elizabeth's house. Sometimes, all three of them cook dinner together. Such ordinary daily moments had become their irreplaceable happiness. Mom, thank you. One night, Melissa said to Elizabeth. If you hadn't come that day. That's what fate is all about. Elizabeth smiled. She had been lonely too since her husband George passed away. But now, every day was fulfilling. A year had passed since the incident. Say cheese. A family photo session was taking place in a Brookline park. Elizabeth, Melissa, and Noah smiled with the autumn foliage as their backdrop. Ms. Anderson, your next property viewing appointment has been scheduled. Melissa's real estate office had already gained a reputation in Boston. In particular, her focus on supporting single mothers had resonated with many people. Meanwhile, Thomas, serving his sentence, had been fired from his company and lost all his assets. Rachel was suffering from mental illness and spent her days in the prison infirmary. Hey, how about going for a picnic after church this Sunday? One evening, Melissa suggested in Elizabeth's kitchen. Yay! I'll help make the sandwiches. Noah jumped up and down excitedly. Outside the window, the sunset cast a fiery glow. Elizabeth quietly watched this scene. After every storm, morning always comes. And a new day begins. Well, shall we start preparing dinner? At Elizabeth's voice, the family gathered in the kitchen. The warm aroma of dinner enveloped their happy home.